South African coach, formerly of Wydad Athletic Club of Casablanca and Mamelodi Sundowns, Rhulani Mokwena has signed for MC of Algiers, a club that plays in the same city where I live. So you can imagine that I'm very, very excited about this. We're going to break down the ins and outs of this move and if we think it was a good idea or a bad one, and what we can look forward to coming up next in the Algerian League One and in the CAF Champions League, coming up next on the African Five-A-Side podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the African Football Report on the African Five-A-Side podcast. I'm your host, Maher Mezahi, and as always, this podcast is brought to you by africasacountry.com. Speaking of Africa as a country, we have our physical edition. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but it's beautiful. It's up on the website. You can find a link. In the description below to purchase the physical issue if you do want to help out the podcast and the website. They've decided to renew their faith in me for another year. So if you want to repay that back to anybody, you can repay it to Africa as a country. And you'd also have a fantastic physical edition about protest on the African continent over the last 15 years or so. One final housekeeping note before we get down to Rhulani Mokwena. We are in the midst of a WFCON. Haven't been covering it as extensively as I want, but we will be recapping the group stages and looking forward to the knockout stages tomorrow with Alistair Haworth of On The Whistle Pod, a freelance journalist that I really, really think is one of the most knowledgeable about African women's football. So we have that to look forward to as well. The WFCON I have been watching. It's been really, really entertaining so far. So yeah, looking forward to recapping that with Alistair tomorrow. Now, Rhulani Mokwena signs with MCA. I don't have all of the details of the transaction. I'm just going to tell you what's been reported in the Algerian press. This is not my information. I'm not necessarily even vouching for this information, although I do believe my hunch is that it's a little bit accurate. So it was reported that him and his camp were asking for 75,000 euros. I actually think that's a little bit overblown. That's what he wanted. It was also reported that MC of Algiers were offering 60,000 euros. This information was revealed 4 or 5 days ago. I think both of those numbers are a little bit inflated, but probably not by too much. It's not clear who shifted more where, if MC of Algiers went closer to the 75 or if Rhulani went closer to the 60, but they eventually found some middle ground and found a compromise. There was also reported that the formatting of the contract, because in Algeria, when you sign a contract with an Algerian club, it's usually the template is given by the Algerian Football Federation. So there was a little bit of a snafu there, because I think Mokwena's camp had to make sure that the contract was looked at to make sure that there weren't any crazy loopholes or anything like that. Mokwena's also, by the way, that salary is also not just for him, it's for him, an assistant coach and a fitness coach. The video analyst will be local. And the objectives in the contract, according to what's been reported, are that he's supposed to win the Algerian championship again, because MC of Algiers have won the last 2 editions of the Algerian championship after not having won it since 2009. So after 15 years, they won the last 2 consecutive editions, and that he has to sort of at least equal what they did last year in the CAF Champions League, which was a quarterfinals exit to Orlando Pirates. So I think they're going to want him to at least get to the semifinal. So if they don't, then they either have to find some kind of friendly way to rupture the contract, or MC of Algiers has to compensate the coach if he doesn't meet his objective. If he meets all of his objectives and they still want to go their separate ways. So now that we got the boring paper part out of the way, I just want to say that I don't think I have ever been this excited about an Algerian footballing season, domestic league, as I do this year. And it's mostly thanks to the PSL, I think. We have Sead Ramovic at CR Belouizdad. We have Rhulani Mokwena at MCA. We have Yusuf Zinbauer at GS Kabylie. Mokwena and Zinbauer will be playing CAF Champions League. Ramovic will be playing CAF Confederation Cup. We have Roman Foles, interesting young coach at Akabu. We have Khaireddine Madoui, winner of the 2014 CAF Champions League at ES Sétif, back home where he belongs. Where he won the CAF Champions League back in 2014. USM of Algiers doesn't have a coach yet. I don't think GS Sarra, who's also playing CAF Confederation Cup, has a coach yet. So, man, and we're in the middle of the transfer window. It's just very, very, very exciting. And the transfer market ahead is going to be massive, because if we can get a huge influx of talent into the Algerian League, I think this will be the strongest Algerian sides have been, again, since probably the mid-2000s, when they won the CAF Champions League and made the final of the 2015 CAF Champions League. USM of Algiers did. So in case we forgot about who MC of Algiers was, I'd just like to give a small refresher about the club. And then after that, I'm going to go what I'm looking forward to seeing from Rhulani at MC of Algiers, and what's giving me a little bit of reserve as well. Not necessarily from the coach, but also from the player, from the club as well. So yeah, MC of Algiers, if you don't know. owned by Sonatrach. Sonatrach is Algeria's oil and gas company. Algeria is a top 10 gas exporter in the entire world. I think top 20 in terms of oil. So this is like obviously a huge uh, oil and gas company, oil and gas country, and it's all owned and operated by Sonatrach, which is a conglomerate which branches off into many different filiaries. So if you look at like the companies in Africa who makes the most amount of income, MC of Algiers is, I'm sorry, Sonatrach is actually number one, and by far it's like bigger than MTN, bigger than any other company on the African continent. So in theory, they should have a huge budget, right? This is also a club, and they do have a big budget. This is also a club with the most amount of supporters. I remember there was a player, Amir Karawi, in 2016. He told me, you have to understand Arabic to get his point, but he said, he was talking about the derby where it's MC of Algiers versus USM of Algiers. He says they call them Ittihad al-Asima, which means the union of the capital, and they call us Mouloudiyyat al-Jazair, which is Mouloudia of Algeria, not just the capital. We have supporters all over Algeria, and I think it's true. They are by far the most popular club in Algeria. They're probably the only club in Algeria that can, on a week in, week out basis, fill up the 5th of July Stadium with 67,000 supporters. But not only do they have the biggest budget, not only do they have the most amount of supporters, there's been, I think, a real political will to ensure that Algeria has a club in that African top 5. We know about Al Ahli, we know about Esperance Tunis, we know about, if you want to throw Wydad in there, we know about Wydad, we know about Mamelodi Sundowns, but Algeria sort of wants a club to be at that level. And so the state built a stadium and they gave it to MC of Algiers, called the Ali Ammar Stadium. So they have their own beautiful stadium that was only inaugurated last year, perfectly modern. Look it up. It's I don't think there's a club in Africa that has a stadium like this to itself. They also have a training center, a beautiful training center out in West Algiers. They have an academy now. So they have everything that's necessary. I think they were just missing maybe one or two players and the coach. Last year, they won the Algerian League fairly comfortably. But if you look at where they sort of tripped up in the CAF Champions League, it was against Orlando Pirates. Now, I was in Algeria. I speak to Algerians on an almost daily basis, and I could tell you that they felt like they were the better side over the 180 minutes. I think even Orlando Pirates fans and South African fans would concede that they had more of the ball and that they were taking more of the initiative over the 180 minutes. I'm just not as generous with MC Algiers. I would have said, like, Orlando Pirates were almost giving it to you. Remember, they were brought in Mbokazi. They were playing with 3 center halves. They were comfortable sitting back. And MC Algiers didn't create enough chances, I think, over the 180 minutes to feel like they were unlucky. But overall, they did feel like they were missing just one creative winger, one creative player, and maybe one striker. Because if you remember, they had the best defense in the group stages. Again, they only conceded 1 goal against Pirates over the 180 minutes. So they feel like they have a good base, but they were just missing that one winger or that one striker to create something out of nothing. And the player 2 years ago was Youssef Beledi, but then he obviously went to Esperance Tunis last year. And they never really replaced him. They brought in Kipre from Azam, who's from Cote d'Ivoire, really great dribbler, but doesn't have the passing ability to unlock defenses or to score goals. Taïb Miziani is like, again, not really at that level as well. Neither is Amin Messousa, this young kid they brought in from Lille in France. And Zakaria Naji is always more of a striker than a winger, in my opinion. So they were really missing that creativity from the wings, in my opinion, and I think in most Mouloudia Vultures supporters' opinion as well. As for the striker, they brought in this 19 or 20-year-old Guinean striker named Mohamed Bangoura in January. And he finished the year, I think, with 7 goals in 10 matches. This guy is incredible. Very, very good player, not just with his link-up play, with his powerful shooting, with his finishing. I say this often when I talk about domestic football, but I really think he's going to be in Europe. I think this is the last year in Algeria. So I think there were already offers for him, and they brought him from Hafia Conakry in Guinea. And man, this kid is, again, very, very special. So I know everybody has their eyes on him already on the African continent, but I don't think MC Algiers will sell to anybody in Africa. So they have the striker in place now, I think, and with Bayazid as a number 2, you can put Naiji as a number 3. So they have, I think, at least 2 or 3 decent strikers in place. They really need the creative ability from the wings now. So that's really all sort of Rhulani has to really do, is maybe find one or two pieces, and I think he has a team that's good enough to go deep in the CAF Champions League. Now, I know most people they came to actually watch to see. I just wanted to give you an idea of like what he's walking into. He's walking into this, okay? A club with a lot of means, but a lot of pressure as well. Um, when you coach at MC of Algiers, you need to be bulletproof mentally. You cannot be weak at all. And I think Rhulani going to coach at Wydad prior to coming to MC of Algiers is actually a good thing. He's going to have at least be exposed to that North African pressure. But MC of Algiers, I think, is even. It's not that there's less pressure than Wydad. It's just that, or not that there's more pressure than Wydad. It's just I think they're a little more irrational at times as well. Like Patrice Baumel, the coach that won them their first league title in 15 years, was fired because they had they weren't scoring goals. They weren't losing matches, but they weren't scoring enough goals. They were only winning 1-0, 0-0, 1-0, 0-0, you know? And they decided to go their separate ways. That's what you do to the coach that brings you your first title after 15 years, you know? They were still in all the competitions. They were in the Algerian Cup. I think they were second or third in the Algerian League. They were still doing decently well in the group stages of the CAF Champions League. And you fire a coach like that, you know? So that's what kind of scares me. It's not that there's more pressure necessarily. It's that I think the decision makers are a little more irrational than in a place like Wydad, where they have at least given managers time to succeed. In this century, I don't think there's a coach that has stayed at MC of Algiers for longer than 2 years. In this century. I don't think it's even happened in my lifetime. I need to look it up. I don't think it's happened in my lifetime as well. I think the longest one was actually Patrice Baumel, which was a year and a half, 18 months. So that's what kind of gives me a little bit of pause, right? So anyways, what I'm looking forward to. So this is what he's walking into. Okay, he's walking into this machine that's really wanting to succeed, really willing to succeed. They have the means. Everything is there. It's a perfect concoction to make him really a legend at the club and in the country. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure as well. So what I'm looking forward to. First of all, I think Algeria as a footballing climate is a little bit poor from a tactics sense, you know. Sometimes you'll watch matches and the halftime analysis will be, this team wanted it more than this team. This coach is weak. This player needs to do better. You know, it's very elementary, very one-dimensional analysis. That's unlike what I see in South Africa when I see, you know, what's happening online. People are discussing tactics and talking about this and that and this and that. I see the level of discourse is a little bit higher. So I think somebody like Rhulani coming, I think is going to force people to pay attention to the tactical side of the game much more. And I think he's going to seem fresh. And in that way, I'm really looking forward to him elevating almost single-handedly the discourse that we have when we talk about football. I also think, as I mentioned, Wydad was a good little taster for him. So I think he's not jumping into straight from Sundowns to MC of Algiers, because I think that would have been even harsher than Wydad, as Sundowns to Wydad. I think I'm happy that he had that 1 year in Wydad to help him sort of know what's to be expected at MCA. I'm also looking forward to seeing him back in the CAF Champions League. I think his place is in the CAF Champions League, and I was a little bit bummed out when he didn't help Wydad qualify to the CAF Champions League, but now, I mean, we get to see him, you know, go to South Africa. We get to see him go to Tanzania, Egypt, things like that. And I think that's when he's at his best. And if he can help MC of Algiers win a second CAF Champions League title, they won in 1975. If they can help them win a second one, I've seen what they do, particularly to foreign coaches in Algeria when they help them win things like that. You know, there's a coach at GS Kabylie that helped them go on this magical run in the 1980s, and he helped them win 2 CAF Champions League titles. Polish coach, Stefan Żywotko. He was not even the principal coach. He was like an assistant or co-coach, you can call them, a co-coach. And even now, when I go to Tizi Ouzou, I see graffiti of him. They wrote books about him. They were inviting him and his family back to Algeria years and years. So basically, if you can help, especially particularly if you're a foreign coach, I think, man, there's an attachment, a bond that occurs, and he can be forever a legend if you can help them win the CAF Champions League title. But that's a huge long shot, you know, because we talk about pyramids, Al Ahly, Sundowns, etc. Anyways, and then finally, you know, when I was at the Club World Cup, I spoke to somebody at Mamelodi Sundowns. Actually, I can mention his name. I think Gulam Valodia, the video analyst. And I asked him about Rhulani. We were talking about Rhulani, and he told me something that stuck in my head. He said, no 2 training sessions were ever the same with Rhulani. Meaning, he always kept the players engaged, fresh. Um, and that means the amount of work that he puts in, the amount of prep work that he puts in, I don't think if I remember correctly, I think he said he hadn't really seen that too often in football. That's not a common trait to have in football. No two training sessions were the same. He's told me unless it was tactical work where repetition is sort of necessary, is kind of key. Um, in that sense, then yeah, of course there would be repetition. But that shows you, like, not only does that show you that this person is creative, this person thinks about things in different ways, but it also tells you that he loves his craft, because the mental effort it takes to really plan a new training session every single evening, I imagine that's not easy, you know? So you have to really love it. You have to be obsessed with it to do that. And so I thought that was something that, as soon as he said it, it stuck in my mind. And I knew, sometimes you have a 3-hour conversation with somebody, but you only really take away maybe 5 to 10 things and you store them away. And that's going to be forever, like, insightful for me, was that conversation that I had with him in that particular line. Now, what I'm not looking forward to for Mokwena and at MCA, um, when we talked about Jose Rivera going to Al Ahly, this idea of long term versus short term. Uh, Jose Rivera was able to build over 3 years at Orlando Pirates, this beautiful project where he was promoting young players and he got them to play a certain style of football, but he could only do it because the club was patient. Going back to what works at MCA, what works at MCA is not a level-headed, insightful, kind person that takes the time to explain things and says we need a long-term project and we're going to have results in 2-3 years. Often what's worked, I'm not saying it can't work, but I'm saying in the past what's worked is you get a mental person. I'm going to give you like Sampaoli or Bielsa, somebody like this. They had a president named Omar Gharib at MC of Algiers, and Algerians will know what I'm talking about here, who's like, he's kind of like I don't want to use a bad word, like a, I don't want to say a street rat, but he's a guy from the streets, when he's like, he'll show up to work in flip-flops and he'll threaten, referees, and he'll threaten players and be like, look, you guys don't win this match, you're not getting paid and you're not getting your bonuses, things like that. And under him, they had some of the best results up until they won the league title a couple years ago. So those are the kinds of characters that have tend to work sometimes, MC Vultures. Again, I'm not saying that things can't change. I hope they do change. I hope we start seeing things in the long term instead of the short termism that has been a plague and a cancer to North African football. But that is the way that things have worked at MC Algiers. So that's one thing that gives me a little bit of pause and makes me worry a little bit. Um, as I mentioned, no coach has stayed at MC of Algiers, I think, going back to at least until this century. I don't think any coach has stayed longer than 2 years. That makes me, like a little, makes me a little angry, and not angry, but a little bit anxious. Um, the last thing that I think gives me a little bit of pause is, how much does Rhulani have a say in personnel? Usually I imagine it's a little bit of a mix of two things, because, there's already players that are being rumored to leave, like this incredible central midfielder, Akram Bourras, who I think should be playing with the Algerian national team, apparently is being courted by Charleroi in Belgium. So if he goes, 'cause if he stays, they have him, Zugrana, and Ben Khamassa in midfield again. I think midfield and defense is already set, and even goalkeeper is pretty much set. Um, but does he have a say in him leaving or no? Does he have a say in the specter of Yusuf Belali returning to MC of Algiers? There's a crazy amount of rumors at the moment saying that Yusuf Belali, there's a good chance that MC of Algiers might bring out the checkbook and sign in a huge check to bring him back to MC of Algiers. Will Yusuf Belali work under Mokwena? He's obviously a character and a half, and he brings with him a huge entourage, right? I don't know. There's rumors that Adam Mounas, the Algerian international, formerly of Napoli and Bordeaux and Nice, and most recently playing his football in Qatar for Al Sadd, there's rumors that they're going to spend a lot to bring him back as well. I think he's a great player, very injury prone, but how much of a say does Rhulani Mokwena have in that? I think it's usually a mix. I think the club, will bring in 2-3 players and tell Rhulani, okay, hey, can you outline 1 to 2 players that you'd like to bring with you as well? But that's something that I have question marks about. And obviously, I don't think anybody will really know unless you're sitting in the negotiation room with the coach and people at the club as well. So yeah, these are the sort of things that I'm thinking about. Is, obviously a brilliant coach. Out of my interactions with him, a brilliant person as well. I think he's going to do a lot of good to Algerian football. I just really, really am anxious about if it takes a little bit of time for the results to come. will people be patient? We don't have a tradition of being patient in Algerian football, especially domestically. If they can be, obviously, I think this would be a success, like Rivera Al Ahly. But if not, I just hope that, like, it doesn't look poor on Mokwena's record, you know? Um, because this is a guy, when I spoke to him in 2023, that I had projected sort of, I thought he was, and I still think he can be really like the first African coach that can make it out of Africa and really be like a top coach in Europe as well. Um, the last 24 months, I feel less confident in that prediction, of course. But there were like the decision for him to go to Wydad was one that I didn't really understand at the time. I thought, this is a downgrade. I thought, why are you going to a place that's so unstable at the moment? And I felt like maybe he was being poorly advised. And I really hesitate to make claims like this because I don't know who's giving him advice. I don't know what the advice is given. This is obviously just as a journalist, something that I'm seeing from the exterior, and I'm trying to give an educated guess on, right? So I'm really not trying to like speak on things I don't know about, but from the outside, it just feels like, why would you make that move now? I don't think that was the right move now. Um, I've heard different theories, people from in Morocco, people in South Africa, people all over the world. Some people, because I ask a lot about Rhulani Mokwen. Some people said he really wants to coach at the Club World Cup. He really wants to be involved for the Club World Cup. Some people said he can't. He's so obsessed with football that he can't take a break for that long. He can't take a break for 1 year or 2 years, which I don't think is true because obviously he took a hiatus, right? What was it? Was it after? It was before Chippa. Was it before Chippa United? He obviously took a huge hiatus, right? When I think he told me where he was traveling a little bit and watching football all over the world. So I think he can take a hiatus. But somebody told me that, like, oh, he can't like not coach for a year or two. Was it a financial decision? If that's the case, then, or was it the thing where it's like, sometimes in football, you're scared to have a year off in your CV or 2 years off in your CV because people can forget about you. Things can move really quickly. So it's that thing where it's like being active is better than being inactive, even if it's in a situation where things are a little bit precarious. So yeah, um, I always would seen him more as like a better fit at a club where the machine is already in place. At MC of Algiers, the machine is almost in place. It's not really in place. At Wydad, the machine was in place when Regragui was there, but when he left, it all fell apart. So it wasn't in place. At Al Ahly, where Rivero's going, the machine is in place. Even if there's, it's a very, very difficult machine to work with from within. But I always think, like a Pyramids would have been great for Rhulani. I think Al Ahly would have been a little bit better. MC of Algiers, I don't think is a horrible decision, but obviously everything is going to be judged in hindsight in 2020. So yeah, these are all the thoughts swirling in my mind. But like I said, I cannot wait for this Algerian football season. I think I'm really gonna try to do the rounds and go and visit all the coaches and speak to all the coaches, whether it's Rhulani, Sayed, Roman, Yosef, and even some of the younger Algerian coaches. I think because I have rarely seen such dynamism, such energy, such creative thinking, all sort of infused into one league. It's rare when you see it. We saw it at the PSL, and we saw how well that turned out for South African football the years later. So yeah. Anyways, I feel like I've been droning on for the last 5 minutes, so I'm going to cut it short there. Thank you for listening. We're going to be talking about WFCON tomorrow, so keep it locked in. And again, if you really want to contribute and help with Africa as a country, please don't hesitate to go to the description right now. There's a link there. Click on it, and you can purchase. We ship all around the world, and you can learn a lot politically about why some of the revolutions, why some of the protests from around the continent have worked or haven't worked. Mostly haven't worked, to be fair. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. And yeah, thanks again for listening. We'll speak soon. Peace.